The Life, Reign and Death of Queen Elizabeth I. Queen Elizabeth I of England, the last monarch of the Tudor dynasty, ruled from 1558 until her death in 1603. Known as the Virgin Queen and celebrated for ushering in a golden age, her reign was marked by political stability, cultural flourishing, and the establishment of England as a significant European power. Elizabeth's life and reign are emblematic of resilience, political savvy, and extraordinary leadership in a turbulent period of religious conflict, foreign threats, and domestic challenges. Elizabeth was born on September 7, 1533, at Greenwich Palace, the daughter of King Henry VIII, and his second wife, Anne Boleyn. Her birth was a moment of great disappointment for her father, who had broken with the Roman Catholic Church and established the Church of England in order to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, in hopes of securing a male heir. Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn, was executed for treason when Elizabeth was just 2.5 years old, and she was declared illegitimate by her father. Despite her demotion in status, Elizabeth received an excellent education under the guidance of prominent humanists and scholars, becoming fluent in Latin, Greek, French, and Italian, and excelling in subjects such as history, theology, and philosophy. Elizabeth's early life was deeply affected by the changing fortunes of her father's court, her half-brother Edward VI's brief Protestant reign, 1547–1553, and the turbulent Catholic restoration of her half-sister Mary I. During Mary's reign, 1553–1558, Elizabeth's Protestant sympathies and potential claim to the throne made her a focal point for conspiracies, and she was imprisoned in the Tower of London in 1554 for her suspected involvement in Wyatt's rebellion. Though she was later released, Elizabeth remained under house arrest for much of Mary's reign. These experiences shaped her cautious and pragmatic approach to governance. Elizabeth ascended the throne on November 17, 1558, following Mary I's death. At the age of 25, she inherited a kingdom deeply divided by religious tensions between Catholics and Protestants, economic instability, and threats from powerful foreign nations like France and Spain. Her first act as queen was to establish a Protestant church, but she adopted a moderate religious policy, which became known as the Elizabethan Religious Settlement. Through the Act of Supremacy, 1559, Elizabeth reinstated the monarch as the head of the Church of England, and through the Act of Uniformity, 1559, she imposed a common form of worship. These acts successfully quelled the religious unrest that had plagued her sister's reign, though they did not fully eliminate Catholic plots against her. Elizabeth's policy was pragmatic, seeking to balance the interests of Catholics and Protestants to maintain peace. Her religious reforms established the Anglican Church as a middle path between Catholicism and more extreme forms of Protestantism, which earned her enemies from both sides. However, her careful balancing act enabled a period of relative religious peace compared to the rest of Europe, which was racked by religious wars. One of the defining features of Elizabeth's reign was her decision to remain unmarried, earning her the title, the Virgin Queen. This was an extraordinary choice for a female monarch at the time, given the prevailing belief that women were ill-suited to rule without the guidance of a husband. Elizabeth, however, turned her unmarried status into a powerful political tool. She used the prospect of marriage as leverage in diplomacy, engaging in negotiations with various foreign suitors, including Philip II of Spain, Archduke Charles of Austria, and François, Duke of Anjou. By remaining unmarried, Elizabeth retained control over her own destiny and avoided entangling England in potentially disastrous foreign alliances. While there was widespread speculation about her personal relationships, particularly with her close advisor Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester, Elizabeth remained single throughout her life. By portraying herself as married to her kingdom and people, she crafted an image of selfless devotion to England, which strengthened her authority and popularity. Elizabeth's reign was not without challenges. One of the most significant domestic threats to her rule came from Mary, Queen of Scots, her Catholic cousin, and the next legitimate heir to the English throne. Mary was forced to flee Scotland in 1568 and sought refuge in England, where she became a rallying point for Catholic plots against Elizabeth. After years of imprisonment and a series of failed conspiracies, including the infamous Babington Plot in 1586, Elizabeth reluctantly signed Mary's execution warrant. Mary's execution in 1587 eliminated a major Catholic threat, but heightened tensions with Catholic Europe, particularly with Spain. On the international stage, Elizabeth's reign was dominated by conflicts with Spain, then the most powerful nation in Europe. Tensions culminated in the Spanish Armada of 1588, a massive naval expedition launched by Philip II to invade England and restore Catholicism. Against overwhelming odds, the English Navy, led by commanders such as Sir Francis Drake, defeated the Armada, thanks in part to innovative naval tactics and the Protestant wind, a storm that scattered the Spanish fleet. This victory was a defining moment of Elizabeth's reign, securing England's independence from Spain and enhancing Elizabeth's reputation as a formidable leader. Beyond military victories, Elizabeth's reign saw successful diplomatic ventures. She maintained a delicate balance of power in Europe through strategic alliances, notably with the Dutch rebels in the Spanish Netherlands, and cautiously avoided large-scale continental wars. Her cautious approach allowed England to consolidate its resources and gradually emerge as a major maritime power. Elizabeth's reign is often referred to as a golden age due to the flourishing of English culture, exploration, and the arts. The late 16th century saw the rise of some of the most significant figures in English literature, including William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Edmund Spenser, whose works have had a lasting impact on Western culture. Elizabeth herself was a patron of the arts, fostering an environment in which theatre, music, and poetry thrived. Exploration and the expansion of English influence overseas also accelerated during Elizabeth's reign. Notable explorers such as Sir Francis Drake, who became the first Englishman to circumnavigate the globe, and Sir Walter Raleigh, who attempted to establish colonies in North America, exemplified the adventurous spirit of the age. The foundations of England's later imperial expansion were laid during Elizabeth's reign, with tentative English involvement in the Atlantic world and the establishment of trading companies, such as the East India Company, in 1600. The period also saw advancements in science and learning, with figures such as John Dee, a mathematician, astronomer, and advisor to Elizabeth, embodying the intellectual curiosity of the age. This fusion of artistic, intellectual, and exploratory achievements contributed to the lasting legacy of Elizabeth's reign as a golden era. By the late 1590s, Elizabeth was growing old, and her reign began to show signs of strain. England faced economic difficulties, exacerbated by poor harvests, inflation, and the costs of prolonged military campaigns, particularly in Ireland, where the 9 Years' War, 1594-1603, drained resources. Additionally, factionalism within her court, particularly between the Earl of Essex and Sir Robert Cecil, threatened to destabilise her government. Essex's rebellion in 1601 was a dramatic example of the internal challenges Elizabeth faced in her later years, though the revolt was quickly quashed, and Essex was executed for treason. Elizabeth's health began to deteriorate in her final years, and she became increasingly melancholic. The deaths of many of her closest friends and advisors, including Robert Dudley and William Cecil, contributed to her isolation. By the time of her death on March 24, 1603, at Richmond Palace, Elizabeth was frail and weary. She reportedly refused to rest in her final days, sitting up on cushions as if still vigilant over her kingdom. Despite the challenges of her final years, Elizabeth's death marked the end of an era. She left no direct heirs, and her passing brought about the succession of the Stuart dynasty, with James VI of Scotland ascending to the English throne as James I, uniting the crowns of England and Scotland. Elizabeth Thurn's reign is remembered as one of the most significant in English history. Her leadership stabilised a deeply divided nation and set the stage for England's rise as a global power in the centuries that followed. Her image as the Virgin Queen, dedicated solely to her kingdom, became a powerful symbol of national unity and pride. Elizabeth's political acumen, shrewd diplomacy, and cultural patronage fostered a sense of English identity that transcended religious and political differences. Her careful navigation of the challenges of her time ensured that her reign was one of relative peace and prosperity. While she faced criticism for certain decisions, including her handling of Irish rebellions and her treatment of Mary, Queen of Scots, Elizabeth's reign is widely seen as a high point in English history. Her legacy endures in the arts, in the emergence of England as a naval power, and in the memory of an extraordinary woman who defied the expectations of her time to become one of the most iconic figures in British history.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Delving into the Deep for regular updates.